everybody has been asking about the birth story, and it just kind of took me a few weeks to process it myself, I guess. So, but I will tell it now. I'll start on Friday. So I believe that was the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. It's the 19th of May. I probably should check. I don't know. The Friday before the 22nd of May, we had our 37-week appointment, and they looked at his position and everything, and he was head down, which, you know, head down into the pelvis or whatever, which he has been the whole pregnancy. Like, I've always felt his hiccups down. Every ultrasound we've done, he's been head down. He could have flip-flopped or, you know, between, but towards the end, you usually can feel it. So he was head down, so I felt pretty good about that. I'd had no complications this whole pregnancy. I mean, it's been very, I don't want to say easy, but sort of easy. I mean, I didn't get sick. I never had morning sickness or whatever. I didn't have heartburn. I didn't have a lot. I mean, it was just pretty easygoing. So I was doing all the research and kind of taking classes and stuff for a physiological birth, which is just, you know, no medication, low intervention, just kind of birthing on your own. I was going to be doing it in a hospital, which is kind of like against physiological birth foundations, but that's just was my option. And that's, I mean, being where I live, we're just not close to great hospitals, as you'll find out in this birth story. So then come Monday, everything was fine over the weekend. I think we just sat around at the house. Come Monday, I did my workout in the morning, which is the same that it's been every Monday for several weeks. I mean, I don't really have a lot of variance, especially towards the end. It's mostly just pelvic floor stuff. But I did add in curb walking for the first time, and that did make my pelvis hurt. So I don't know if that had anything to do with anything, but I got home. I went to my job. I met somebody there for a baby gift, and then I came home. I ate lunch. I think I took a shower, and then I laid down on the couch, and not even 10 minutes later, I kind of felt like a warm fluid come out, and I was like, oh, maybe my water has broken, and I kind of got excited, and I stood up, and blood just went down my legs. So I immediately, like, my heart dropped. In my brain, I immediately was like, the only thing that could really be causing blood would be a placental abruption, because they didn't ever tell me where my placenta was throughout my pregnancy, but they never mentioned it being in a bad position. It was always like, oh, it looks good, you know, and we just went on. So, because I know there's placenta previa, which is when your placenta is close to your cervix, and it tries to come out before the baby does, which is also very dangerous. So, I immediately was thinking in my head, like, I'm about to have this baby C-section. Like, there's no other entry. There's no other option. Like, that was immediately in my brain. And I was kind of already starting to wheels turn on what it means to have a C-section and kind of processing that. Well, I waddled to my bathroom, and I stood in the bathtub because, I mean, it was just pouring. I mean, it was just going everywhere. My house looked like a crime scene. And I called my hospital because I wasn't sure what to do. I could barely, like, think, really. And they told me I needed to go to the emergency room, so I called our emergency room and asked if I could come in. Seriously, I had no idea what to do. Like, I don't know if you're supposed to call the emergency room or not. I did. And then I called Austin to come get me. He came home from work, picked me up, and I was able to change and put on, like, a diaper, basically, because I was bleeding. I mean, it was just gushing, and my house shoes were soaked in it. It was just terrible. So he came and picked us up, and we got to the ER, and I went to go check in. It took forever. Thankfully, I was sitting there, I could feel him moving, which was a good sign, but it was also still, I didn't know, like, what it meant. Could mean that he was, you know, I don't know, just suffocating. Like, that was kind of things that were going through my brain. It took forever to check in. We sat there for probably, it felt like an hour. that long, but it felt like forever. And then we got sent to the back. They listened to him on a Doppler. His heart rate was still good. Like, he was in the 130s. Gentry, stop. In 140s, which is great. So I kind of gave me some reassurance that he wasn't in immediate distress. But that's all that they could really tell me. They really had no idea. They didn't have an OB doctor at our ER, and it was just really chaotic in there, and there was an OB nurse, so she kind of had an idea of what was going on, but she couldn't tell me anything. And basically the ER doctor came back and told me that he couldn't do anything for me. He could deliver a baby if it was already coming, but that was it. He was pretty blunt, not reassuring whatsoever. It was pretty terrible. She did a cervical check on me. They called the nearest hospital, which wasn't the hospital I was putting on to birth at, but it was Paris Regional in Texas, because I live really close to the Texas border. And they needed to see what the baby's position was and see if I was dilated. The cervical check was horrible. I had not had one up to this point. That came off the table. They took my blood, messed it up several times. Austin passed out while we were there because of just all the chaos and me being in pain and freaking out. And they took me to do an x-ray to see the baby's position, which he was head up. So he had flipped from head down this way to head up this way, which was shocking news to me because I hadn't felt him flip at all. So it must have happened in my sleep at some point between Friday and that Monday. And so they came in, they did the cervical check. I was closed, apparently not dilated at all. Because I'm 37 weeks, I guess I hadn't mentioned that at this point. Well, yes, I did. I'm 37 weeks and 4 days, I believe, once we were at the ER. So, wasn't dilated at all. I really wasn't expecting to be. But they were basically like, we just have to transfer you to the nearest hospital, and it's about 45 minutes away, but the ambulance is also going to take about 45 minutes to get here. And we couldn't leave on our own, so we just had to wait. And it felt like forever. Every time I got up to go do that x-ray or whatever, and I had to pee in a bedpan too, so that was fun. Blood just was still coming out, going everywhere. So, not really reassuring there. I just had, nobody really could give me any answers to anything, and so I was really just ready to get out of there. So, the ambulance came, and luckily one of our friends was the EMS driver. So that was, comforting, I guess. And we drove to Paris. And thankfully, once we got to Paris, it was just like way better of an experience. I immediately felt safer. Gentry, don't start. I immediately felt safer. I feel like they took care of me there. They put me on a fetal monitoring thing so I could, consistently monitor his heart rate. And he was doing fine. He wasn't in distress, but they immediately noticed that my water had broken. So that's probably why the blood was just coming out like that, because it was mixed with amniotic fluid. So there was just so much more fluid coming out than just blood. But when it mixed together, it just looked like a lot of blood. And the ultrasound tech came in, and he saw that, he was, of course, head up, and he was just checking everything out. Everything looked okay. He did see that I had possibly a small placental abruption. It was, my placenta was up here, my ribs, so he couldn't really look at it. It was kind of confusing. But since my water had broken, and he was head up, and then I had already lost all that blood, they were just like, it's just better if we do a C-section. And for me at that point, I was already ready. It was just a lot to go through, and then to even think about trying to go through a labor where it's so mental. I was just ready to have him at that point. I don't think I could have gone through a natural labor at that point, because I would have been so scared that he was dead, But the doctor at Paris Regional was amazing. They were very reassuring, and I'm really glad that I did the research that I did because I knew kind of what I was able to ask for. I didn't really do a whole lot of looking into C-sections, which I kind of wish I had, but I really just, I almost didn't want to know about it because I thought it would maybe cause me to have a C-section, I don't know, or be more okay with it, and then maybe allowing myself to give into it, say the doctor offered it or something while I was in labor. I don't know. But there was some C-section, information in all my other research that I did. No. Back up. No. So I did have some information. I knew what I could ask for. So while we were, talking about it, which, because it's an emergency C-section, I guess, but it wasn't like they were rushing me back there, not letting me kind of take it in for a minute. Nuke. No. Go. Out. Out. Go. Go. Sorry. So I knew what I was allowed to ask for and kind of what I could suggest. So I did ask for like delayed cord clamping. I didn't want, I wanted him to come straight to my chest. I was able to hold him throughout the C-section. I didn't want the erythromycin eye ointment. I didn't want the Hep B shot. So I just knew things that I could specifically ask for and kind of making it my own C-section, which I know, like, if you were having, like, a deathly emergency, the baby needed to come out right now, you might not be able to ask for those things, but maybe that's something you could talk about with your doctor. Say, if the C-section were to happen, like, if we were having to go down that road, these are some of the things that I would want, especially if you aren't able to advocate for yourself while you, say, you get put under general anesthesia or something, like, and then they just, and your husband might not know. I mean, you need to be prepared kind of for those situations, at least. Thankfully, me and my husband are on the same page with everything, and he kind of knew. We listened to podcasts together and all that, which is very helpful because you just never know. So they wheeled me back, and which it was really awesome. Like, the nurse that I had, she was actually, her shift had ended, but she was staying anyways just to see through the C-section. And then the doctor had just he left a funeral or something. I don't know really, but they like all showed up for me, and it just, I don't know, I really felt cared for. And so we went back, and all the girls in the back were really awesome, and they made me feel okay, and they explained everything to me. So, I didn't feel like things were happening to me that I was unaware of or didn't give consent to. Gentry, stop. No, come lay down. And then the doctor came in, my husband came in, the doctor came in, and we got started. I mean, immediately when he came out, I just immediately was bawling. And they put him on my chest, and it was just so exciting, and I was really glad that I was able to hold him because surgery's rough. I'll tell you what, like, literally felt like they were playing tug of war with your insides. Like, it's crazy. And I was able to hold him, and then they took him to do his little weight and stuff, and then I got him back, did our little hour of skin to skin, and then they did see that he, just being a C-section baby, they needed to get that fluid out of his lungs, so he did have to go back for that, and he was 37 weeks, so he was just a little bit underdeveloped, I believe. I mean, he just needed some more transition time, so that part did suck. I mean, he was in the NICU for 2 days, and thankfully it was right across my hall, so I was able to walk over, which helped me get out of bed, for recovery, which also terrible. So I was able to walk over and see him multiple times a day, which is hard still at the same time because you just want to bring your baby back. So finally, he was able to stay with us. We had to get some successful feedings before they officially took out his IV. But then after that, we were good to go. So that is that. And if I had any advice about everything, because I have heard some people talk about, you know, that I had prepared so much for this other style of birth, and then I ended up with a C-section. I would do it all over again. I mean, you should research your own body and research what you can ask for, what interventions are, you know, important, or which ones are not important, or not important but necessary. It's wild to me that people just put all the trust in their doctors. You should trust your doctor, but you should do your own research at the same time. Like, it's just, there's so much unnecessary things that can be offered, that are offered, and I'm thankful for the care that I received at Paris. They were all crunchy nurses, if you will, and they were awesome, and they totally accepted everything that I had asked for, and they supported me, so I love that. But if I hadn't have known, I wouldn't have asked for any of those things, and they would have just gone on like normal hospital policy would have required. And yeah, so just do your research. Don't just expect to wing it and be okay. I feel like the trauma that I had was from the ER, and I felt actually very safe and very okay with the C-section. It was hard, like, with the NICU, but I mean, he was early, so that's just kind of a part of it. But yeah, so I don't feel bad for doing all my research and making a birth plan or anything like that. I'll do it again the next time. So that's it. That's my birth story. And here's the little guy who scares everybody, snoozing away.